And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most tantalizing topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 144th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 537th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, October 24th, 2019. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment happened on Sunday when the 2019-2020 Indiana Hoosiers traveled to Indianapolis to play Marquette in a secret scrimmage. It is always good for players who have practiced against their teammates since March to finally play against another team. Many of us have seen the box score, read the tweets, and maybe even watched the short video produced by Marquette Basketball. However, the importance of this scrimmage lies with the development of this Indiana basketball program. The scrimmage gave us some insight into areas of improvement that will allow the Hoosiers to compete in the Big Ten this season. While it is difficult from the outside to seriously gauge what happened on Sunday, the information that has been released does show some of the potential of this Hoosier squad. Indiana fans have endured many predictions talking about what this team cannot do, and thus ranking them 9, 10, or 11th in the Big Ten. The scrimmage shed a little light on what the Hoosiers may be able to do this season. Things like building and using depth. Armand Franklin seems to be pushing for a larger role than many may expect. 4 players in double figures without 2 starters playing shows the versatility of the team. Improved shooting and offensive efficiency, 50% from 3, and taking 43 free throws means attacking the rim and getting fouled. We will discuss the free throw shooting percentage later in the show. Good transition numbers, outscoring your opponent in fast break points. A top 30 defense is what Indiana fans are looking for, and the defensive field goal shooting percentage was solid in the scrimmage. So the season has just begun. The team has lots of areas to improve on, but what we can take away from Sunday is that this team is going to show up and play. It will utilize the entire roster, and hopefully its ceiling is a lot higher than most predict. Okay, now let me introduce my esteemed co-hosts for this week's show. Jared and Ryan are both off this week as they needed extra time to try on Halloween costumes in advance of next week's show. But here with me to my left is the Frank Vogel of Girls Youth Sports Coaching in Cincinnati, the President Emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and still the godfather of the Assembly Call bracketologist. He is Andy Bottoms. Andy, what is your bottoms line on the last week in Indiana basketball?
Well, like you said, I think a lot of people's thoughts come from the scrimmage, and it's funny, you can look down just about every player and find something that you really like. And if you want to spin things in a positive way of what you think that scrimmage tells us about that player and how they'll fit into the season. And for just about everybody, you can look and you can find something to nitpick and really give reason for concern. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the scrimmage, but I do think, I think something like that gives good experience for some of the younger guys to be able to, get in that situation against, a real college team. And I think in that regard, a game like this is more beneficial than another exhibition game would be. And so the, not really injuries or I guess the holdouts of Rob and Devontae gave other guys some opportunity that, in Armand's case, and Al as well, they got to play some extra minutes, play a little bit more of the point than they would have otherwise expected. And I think, those are things that can be a positive for them as we look forward. So I'll save a lot of my other, thoughts about it until we really talk through the game. But I think overall, positive experience that hopefully these guys can, draw from at some point later in the season. And I think as I look down the list and you put the game into context, I would put more things in the good category than the bad, even though, like I said, there's a few things that you could nitpick. Certainly, if you watch that Marquette video, it looks like we're going to have a terrible season. But I guess since that was taken from a slanted perspective, it was maybe that had something to do with it. But I need the IU version of that to make me feel a little bit better, but otherwise, otherwise I think a good experience. And, a week from tonight, we'll have already had an exhibition post-game show under our belts. So I think we'll get a lot better chance to learn more from there. And really the biggest thing with this team, as much as injuries were a factor last year, it seems by all accounts that IU is being cautious with Rob and Devontae and even Al at the end of the game. You sure see, though, from some of the numbers, how quickly depth will be tested if they happen to run into injury issues even close to what they had last year. So that's something to watch for. But again, I don't think that's anything that we can make black or white observations on from the scrimmage.
And to my right, I'm excited to introduce you to our other student intern for the season, one of the hardest working people in student journalism. He covers IU basketball for us and for Inside the Hall. He covers IU football for the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, and he covers the world of life-size bags of popcorn for himself. He is Cam Drummond. Cam, what are your opening thoughts on the last week in IU hoops?
Pleasure to be on for my first Assembly Call radio appearance. Just want to say, thanks for having me on, and a pleasure to meet you guys and everything. And so I guess just from the first week, obviously kind of the dominating storyline has to be the secret scrimmage, and not only looking at who played and what their roles are, but for me personally, I have more of an interest in the front court this year, especially seeing how it's going to shake out when you lose players like Fitzner and Juwan Morgan as well. So taking a look at that minutes distribution was really interesting to me, seeing that Race Thompson was the player who got the bulk of the minutes in that secret scrimmage compared to a guy like Doron Davis, who only had 10 minutes. And I know kind of the show tonight is going to be a little Doron Davis preview edition, and we'll talk about the secret scrimmage a bit more. The idea of different players getting different variations of minutes, because Archie Miller has said so many times this preseason about wanting to play a big-bodied, bigger lineup where two of the three, or maybe even three of the four kind of bigger, more muscular inside players for Indiana are going to get a chance to, crash and bang and contend for rebounds and points in the paint. So just kind of looking at the way that Archie was tinkering with things during that secret scrimmage against a legit Marquette team. And I don't think we should forget either that Archie Miller got technical fouls somehow during a secret scrimmage. Maybe that makes it indication of a bit more fiery Archie Miller, a bit more aim.
Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about this week. We'll run through a few Hoosier headlines, including the recent secret scrimmage, as we've talked about in all of three of our opening comments. Then we'll discuss Indiana's other senior who has had trouble staying on the floor during his career, but whose unique skill set could be a difference between Indiana returning to the tournament or not this season. And finally, we'll answer your questions. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. But first, let's talk about tickets. You have a lot of options when it comes to where you get your sports tickets, and this isn't an industry that is known for its growth, innovation, and customer friendliness. But with millions of live event tickets and a price match guarantee, SeatGeek proves that there's a better way. They built the fastest way to find tickets so that you can stop searching for the perfect seat and instead start enjoying it. Just look at the App Store. SeatGeek has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and the reason is because they deliver a better process for buying tickets. SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web and then rate each deal on a scale of 1 to 10 with a color-coded system to show the value. Green dots mean good deals, red dots are overpriced. Then they display the tickets on an interactive seat map so you can see right where they are. And every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets with confidence. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone because I'm looking for tickets to the February 8th game when Assembly Call fans and the crew will meet together after the game. And I like what SeatGeek can provide. And best of all,
can a brother get some coupons?
Yes, you can. SeatGeek will give you $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase, and all you need to do is use our promo code. So download the SeatGeek app today and use the promo code ASSEMBLY for $10 off your first purchase. That's promo code ASSEMBLY for $10 off your first purchase. Okay, Hoosier headlines this past week. We've obviously going to talk about the secret scrimmage. We got a nice question from Chad that we'll play here shortly. An interesting note, the team arrived a little later than they wanted to, so the guys didn't have a whole lot of time to warm up. Might explain why Archie got that technical, Cam. But I think there was a Colts home football game. And I know that because there was another team that my son is a manager for, we won't mention on the show, But they had a secret scrimmage following the Hoosiers, and they had difficulty fighting the post-game traffic later on that Sunday. So maybe that's why Archie was a little grouchy. Dawson Garcia, his official visit is this weekend, and it is huge. Most people think it's between Indiana and Marquette, and maybe this weekend will be the deciding factor as Garcia tries to make a decision in November. Can IU move the needle enough in his first visit to Bloomington to win his services? And Joey Brunk won the new gold jersey. So those are some Hoosier headlines, and fellas, be free to talk about any of those. But I'm going to start with Chad's question on the secret scrimmage. Here's Chad.
Hey, this is Chad from the Chat Mob, a long-time listener, first-time voicemailer 2 hours before the show. The secret scrimmage stat numbers came out, and to my surprise, Hoosier Nation was able to overreact and to just numbers and letters printed on a sheet of paper. We're not known as a fan base that overreacts. I was kind of shocked by that. So anyways, what did you guys find surprising in those numbers? Maybe something that was improved upon from last year, or something that shocked you the most? I will hang up and listen to your response. Thanks.
Andy, let's go to you. What was the most surprising thing in those numbers from the secret scrimmage?
Well, I think probably be remiss not to talk about the free throw shooting. And so this is kind of like what I said in the beginning. If you want to find the positive, you'd say you had a free throw rate of 97.7 for the game because they shot 43 free throws and took 44 field goal attempts. And a lot was made of the percentage that they shot. And while that is, alarming given the recent history of that, Nick Baumgart did a good job. He had a series of tweets. He's at Nick_Baumgart, BAUMGART. And he kind of went through a couple things, and he cited some things from Dean Oliver's book, Basketball on Paper, about, just really getting to the free throw line is important. And he had some stats over the last 5 seasons that IU is so overall IU's got a 592 winning percentage. When the free throw rate is above 37%, IU wins at a 76% clip. So they're 48-15. Any other time they're 52-54. So his message was generally, don't get as hung up. Yes, it's if they continue to shoot that way over the course of the entire season, there's reason for concern. But focus a little bit more on, the fact that they were able to get to the line that much, draw that many fouls. There were a number of guys who drew a ton of fouls. I think Brunk drew 6 over his time in the game, and they're, seeing some of those numbers, and you pointed that out as well in your, coach's corner this week within the community. And so I think, if you want to find the positive, like, to me, that was pretty surprising. Not necessarily surprising in the sense that I think this is one of the ways this team is going to have to score, because the outside shooting is also a concern heading into the season. But Marquette's not going to set the world on fire defensively by any means, but I thought it was a good sign of aggressiveness, and so that really stood out. I mean, anytime you get a free throw rate of almost 98 in any game, scrimmage, whatever you want to call it, I think that bodes well for the aggressiveness of really trying to get downhill. Now, we don't know what was run offensively to be able to create those chances. And ideally next week we'll get a better chance to see that. But that was kind of from a team number, something that stood out to me.
And I had pointed out in the community, the video I did in the community, that Indiana, I think, made 24 foul shots and Marquette took 26. And I saw somewhere Marquette or someone tweeted out that due to really good foul shooting down the end, Marquette was able to hold on. So again, from a defensive perspective, not fouling is important as well. And the field goal percentage defense was there. And that speaks to that top 30 defense, that if Indiana could be a top 30 defense, I think they're going to be competing for 20 wins and that. So those numbers too were not surprising, but I tend to look at the positives as I think this team is being predicted at its floor at the worst at 9, 10, and 11. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement. And so those numbers, Cam, you talked about looking at the post position this year. Were there any numbers or minutes or whatever with the post players that really stood out to you that help you in determining who's going to play and who's going to make a difference?
Yeah, kind of something that I guess was interesting, maybe not in the traditional post sense but I mean, still from someone who started at the forward position in the secret scrimmage was Justin Smith. He logged 28 minutes, took 10 shots, led Indiana in a number of shots taken, only made 4 of them, finished with 9 points. But I guess just kind of speaking to the concept of Justin Smith still having the green light to shoot for Archie Miller and for this Hoosier team. It's not like any confidence necessarily was lost in him from last season when he maybe kind of struggled in the mid-range or struggled to, maybe kind of create his own shot if he wasn't right there at the basket or, wasn't set up by some other kind of off-ball movement from the Hoosiers. But having Smith, I mean, the lineup that they started the secret scrimmage with was super big as well. You're talking about Smith, Jackson Davis, Anderson, Brunk, and Al Durham being the starting lineup. I mean, that's 3 forwards, a center, and a guard that they played with, obviously with Finney and Green not playing. But having Justin Smith and maybe kind of encouraging him to keep his confidence up, continue to take shots and continue to maybe explore from where around the floor is going to end up being his bread and butter this season, because he's maybe one of those unknown pieces in the front court for Indiana, especially kind of dependent on where you want to slot Demezy at, where you want to slot Jerome Hunter at. Maybe Justin Smith is a player who you'd be afraid would get lost in the shuffle or lose his hesitancy to try and create offensively. And, him taking 10 shots and playing 28 minutes, even though it is in a secret scrimmage, given, the players who weren't playing, is still a positive step. And also only seeing him take 1 3-point shot as well is probably a bit of a reassuring thing for Indiana fans too.
And you bring up a good point too, and they're talking about it in the chat mob as well, that sometimes you can stop these scrimmages. It does simulate a true game, but there's a lot of control on the coaches on what they're doing and where the ball's taken out of bounds and stuff. And that's stuff where you can only take so much from these statistics. But overall, I do like the balanced scoring as well, to add to what you guys have said, the fact that without 2 of your best players, the point guard we're relying on and the senior shooter, and we were able to have 4 guys in double figures. Jerome Hunter is always going to be a guy that they're going to take some precaution with, and he played 14 minutes and scored 7 points. And so maybe if he can up that to 18 to 20 minutes, given his health situation, can he find double digit? And most people are worried about where the scoring's coming from, and it looks like we have some people throughout the lineup that can score. So overall, Andy, positive takeaway, negative on the scrimmage?
I think, like I said, I think more for me was in the positive category, given the circumstances and who you didn't have in the game. I think for Jerome to be able to get those minutes, by any account that I read, talked about there's still a lot of rust for him to work off. But again, I think better for him to try to work that off in this scenario. And I think you see that in the minutes. They let him play 14 minutes. He did have 4 turnovers in that time period. And I think that's what you expect. And in some ways, that's where the early season schedule is going to be good for a guy like him, that it lets you shake off the rust in a I don't want to say non-competitive situation, but in a little bit more of a low pressure situation, I guess you'd say. So I think that's positive for him. As you said, 4 guys in double figures, 5 with at least 9 points, I believe. I thought Brunk sounded like he played well, had 11 and 7. Trace had 11. I think the rebounding for him was, if you want to find a negative number for him, only grabbing 1 rebound, I think is a concern. But I also think, that will come. I think he's too talented physically not to really be able to rebound at a high level. And even, I think a lot was made of guys like Demezy and Race playing a ton of minutes, but not really scoring very much. And I don't love seeing Demezy 0 for 4 from the free throw line, but he didn't take a ton of shots. I think he might have only taken 3 or 4 shots over the course of 29 minutes. So that to me says he wasn't really forcing anything. Did grab 7 rebounds, was playing a little bit out of position because I think he was playing some 2 in the game, which I don't think probably suits him all that well, particularly defensively. And then Race had, 7 rebounds in 26 minutes as well. I think he took, maybe a couple more shots than Demezy. But he's also a guy who doesn't have a lot of basketball under his belt. So, really you could look down the list, and even guys who got scrutinized, I guess, for not scoring as much, I thought were able to contribute, and a balanced effort like that is good. I think if you want to look at the potential negatives, didn't generate a lot of points from turnovers and didn't generate a lot of second chance points. I think for a team that is not expected to shoot the ball all that well, which hopefully will be proven wrong as we're just, beating that into the ground over the course of the offseason. But being able to get easy baskets like that, I know you mentioned fast break points, so that is at least one way to get it. But, getting points off of turnovers and runouts and off of just, second chances for a team that has such such a large amount of size in the front court. Again, it's a 1-game sample size that was a scrimmage. So hesitate to take too much to it. But if you want to look at kind of negative things in terms of where points are coming from, that was one piece that stood out a little bit. The Archie technical, though, I think was great. Yeah. I wish I knew what it was for. And I love that a referee at some point was so annoyed by him in a situation where there was no crowd and nothing else going on that he felt compelled to give him a technical. Maybe Archie just paid him like $20 to put it on the score sheet just to generate chatter about it. And either way, I'm all for it, no matter what.
Archie must have been fired up about that drive in, not only being slowed down, but passing all those tailgates and the barbecue smell. He probably was, if it was me, that's probably what I would have been grouchy about. Cam, is there anything that you see from what we've heard in the scrimmage about that post rotation? I'm thinking Justin's going to play more of the 3. Hunter will be there. Demezi could play the 3 a little bit. Both of those guys can slide into the 4, typical 4 if those positions. But did you see anything that we should share with people to maybe some insight on what Archie's thinking about who's going to play and how they're going to play?
Yeah, I think that's a good point you made with Justin Smith there, just because especially when you're taking a guy like Jerome Hunter, who has the rust, who's still, forget the fact that he sat out all of last year. He's still a bit raw as a player as well. He's going to need time to adjust, and that's what those non-conference games are for, to start the season. So I think then you're looking at maybe 2 of the 3 guys when you take Trace Jackson Davis, Doron Davis, and a guy like Joey Brunk, and trying to figure out which 2 of those 3 can coexist on the floor at the same time. And obviously, given the minutes distribution from the scrimmage, you see Doron only played 10. That means Trace and Joey work together more on the court, maybe even giving Race Thompson a bit of a look in some of these early games. And Archie said as well that the key is going to be being able to branch out and defend on the perimeter. That's something that obviously suits Trace Jackson Davis better, just from his athletic build standpoint and his mobility standpoint, because Brunk and Davis can be the bruisers on the inside and kind of control that paint area. But a defensive concern for Indiana has to be their ability to close out on 3-point shooters. With all the good things that Doron can do on offense, passing the ball and, creating floor space for himself, they won't be able to close down the same way that Trace can. So I think, if anything, this game might be a bit of an indication that Trace gets a bit of a run out to start the season, just because of his ability to sprint out and close the gap on perimeter shooters.
Yeah, and that's been a concern of mine too, is can you guard that stretch 4? Butler has a McDermott type player, those really small forward, power forwards with a big lineup, and I can't agree. And you mentioned Doron Davis and his minutes, and coming up, it's our time for our Doron Davis season preview. He's had a major impact whenever he's been on the floor for Indiana, but that's the big question. Can he stay on the floor? If so, he could be Indiana's most important X factor this season. So stick with us. We'll discuss next here on the Assembly Call. All right, 2307 or 2304 on the recorder, as the bottom thing keeps ticking on Jared's wonderful recording device. Hello, everybody in the chat mob. Now, Cam, this is the fun part, because now we can just talk. We're not recorded. It's not going out on the radio. It's not going out. And
Jared's not here to take drops of things that you say that maybe out of context, or maybe even in context, or not exactly what you'd want him to sound like. But
he goes back and finds them too on all the.
He really does.
5 different recordings of this thing going on right now. So
yeah, as soon as I said the it's 8:58 thing that was used last week, I was like, well, that's going to come back to haunt me. But anytime Ryan gives me a hard time about being late, I just, or almost late, I just couldn't handle it. So what are you gonna do?
I don't know.
That was okay though. I do think most of the numbers from the scrimmage were good. I think the Doron thing, only playing 10 minutes, I wonder a little bit about that, but I assume it's just a preventative type thing, and we can get into that when we talk about it now. But
there's no need to.
Andy, what's going on in the chat? They said something. Is it still on? It says, but it's still on YouTube. Are we on the air? I don't know if there's something that's gone wrong.
I don't know.
I
don't know. I have it up, but it doesn't say that it's ended. I don't know. Let me see. Oh boy. So
if we're on YouTube, I didn't shut anything off, so I don't know if.
Yeah, it's still on YouTube. I'm good.
Okay, so it's on YouTube. I don't know if it's gone off elsewhere for the chat mob. Sorry about that.
That I cannot say, but I still see it on. I still see it on YouTube.
It's toggled on Facebook and it's toggled on Periscope. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Yeah, looks like the Periscope's still rolling, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
They're joking about Ryan asking if it was going to be on the podcast or on the air.
Oh, all right. Now, chat mob, you can't do that to me when I'm hosting because I'm worried about all this stuff, and I thought I hit a button wrong. Thought I was about to get fired.
This is what happens when Jared's not here. We're all just on the brink of a breakdown of some kind. So
absolutely, and I
that's
just
funny.
Got him another drop, saying I was thinking I was going to get fired. God, I hate when I do that.
I'm glad that we've chosen to still speak freely, even knowing that. It's a.
There are times when I set it up. I think this would be a good drop, and then there are other times when I go, "Wait, man, that's just dumb," and I know it's going to come back to haunt.
Nice.
No, I think overall the secret scrimmage was positive. I mean, 43 free throws. Yes, we got to hit them. My big worries were, can we guard with the bigs, and who's going to score? I mean, that's what you're hearing from everyone. We didn't even have Devontae, and we had 4 or 5 guys right around 9 or 10. You know, that's not going to put us in the top 25 necessarily, but maybe that wins us those 20 games where, you know, on a given night it's someone else stepping up. That could be fun.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be pretty balanced. I would imagine. It's like, and it's hard to tell, like, not knowing who played what minutes, because second half defensively the numbers were really good. I think that Marquette only shot like 26%, 27% or something like that. But it's like, you know, Howard only played 20 some minutes, so it's like, did he play most of the first half and then not in the second half? You don't really know. And I didn't read anything that said that, but.
Well, and you just wonder too, like last year in the scrimmage, that's when Finney showed people he could play. And so stats aside, maybe Franklin's showing that he can be ready for 12, 14 minutes of productive play. That would really help if you could throw him in there.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing to that point is just the guard depth is kind of so shallow once you get past Finney, Green, and Durham. I mean, then you got 4 of the 5 walk-ons being guards, and you're not going to probably play Cooper Bybee any kind of extended minutes in the game. So it's on Armand.
Yeah, I think good for him to be able, play against a guy like Marcus Howard, and essentially what's your first kind of college opponent experience is a good one. And it sounded like he held up pretty well against him defensively as well. I mean, I know he ended up with 7 fouls, but, you know.
That's the new rule.
I like it. Take as many as they'll let you have. That's, you know.
That'll add to the Assembly Hall, reputation.
Yeah, exactly. Hall of calls. This guy's out here still playing with 7 fouls.
All right. Doron Davis. Cam, I'm going to come to you first.
Sure.
Since you wrote the article, I'll try to kind of do that. I'll read a little intro here that Jared has. Come to you and then Andy, and then I'll go to answer some of the questions. RC the MC, if healthy, could he be all Big Ten? I'll come back and ask that probably of you, Cam. There's and then Cam asked one. Is this you?
No, it's not. There was another. I didn't put the Twitter handle in when I copied it in.
He's asking his own questions on his first night.
Hey, you just got to sometimes you got to set yourself up. Just try
That's
to.
Right.
Exactly.
He's got a great answer for this.
I've got a great answer.
I think that's what it is. So he sent it in.
Funny you should ask.
Send it to me. Yeah.
So I'm sending that one to Andy.
No, I do think those last 2 are kind of interesting. Just given it's hard to put the minutes in the context of the scrimmage, but you can't really see a scenario where he and Brunk are playing together. So it's a little bit, I think there were some things alluding to, like, well, is Brunk the starter and he's the backup guy, and how would he handle that, and some of those things.
So I'll throw it to you guys.
That's the context I put that in, at least.
Yeah, I'll go Cam first, and then Andy for general thoughts about Doron coming in, and then I'll go to Cam's question and Lee's question if we have time.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Sounds good.
Let me get set here. Okay, you got that. My goodness, I never knew, Andy, what you and Jared did when you hosted these shows.
I will say, in fairness, until he went through the other process, it was a pretty simplified version when I would do it, because I didn't have all the software, and then I think that would leave a lot of work for him at the end. But
yeah. So this is nice. You could just upload the audio file at the end of the night. And
yeah, that part's good. It's just a matter of like, I don't have a screen big enough to put all the different things that you have to have running to make sure that it's still okay and actually be able to pay any attention to what the hell's going on outside of that.
I have 2 screens and it's not enough.
Oh, well, good. When I do it, I only have my laptop screen. So it's,
My goodness.
I'm waiting for smoke to start coming out of my computer and then go from there.
All righty, here we go. All right.
What's going on? It's Christian Wofford. What's the only thing better than an epic buzzer beater? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join my guys Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcast or watch those replays and see all the between the segment banner, then check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assembly call. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms and our student intern for this season, Cam Drummond. And we're now going to go to a Doron Davis preview for the year. And in the previous years, Doron's percentage of minutes, freshman, it was 33.9. Sophomore year, 22.5% of the minutes. And his junior year, 28.7%. So can he play 35% of all minutes this year? That would be 14 minutes a game. If so, is his ability to chew up and spit out opposing teams' backup big men could be a huge difference if he comes off the bench. What is his role going to be? And a few notes from his performance. Indiana's offense was 0.1 points per possession better when he was on the floor, and the defense was about the same. And in the month of January, Doron missed 4 games, and he played 4 or fewer minutes in the other 3, and Indiana lost all 7 games. What would have happened last year if Doron was available for all of those games? So these are some things that we're going to be talking about. And Cam, I'm going to turn to you first. You had a great article in Inside the Hall on Doron Davis for his preview. Share with our listeners what you think his role and contribution to this team will be.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we can just start off with like what we know about Doron Davis. I mean, he's a phenomenal player, someone who can really affect things in a lot of ways for the Hoosiers, but just through getting into foul trouble and through the injury bug, not only his sophomore year with the actual torn Achilles, but last year he had so many different bumps and bruises and nicks, banging up his ankle, just needing rest. I think it was at one point in the season, Archie Miller said he should have, been shut down for like a 2-week period, but instead he kept trying to play and it just kept getting aggravated. And I believe it was during that stretch, as you mentioned, actually, when Indiana lost all 7 games when he wasn't super effective. And that's actually super helpful because, I'm a journalism major. I'm not a math kid or anything, but I crunched some of the numbers from last year. So if you look at the final 14 games of the Indiana season, 13 of those 14 games, Doron Davis played double-digit minutes in. And if you look at that period, Indiana went 7-7 over those 14 games. And of those 7 wins, they were highlighted by probably their 3 best wins of the season: home and road against Michigan State, and then home against Wisconsin. So just from a direct correlation standpoint, when Doron Davis is playing 10-plus minutes on the floor, Indiana is winning basketball games at a much higher clip than they are with him off it. Then you get into the talk about what his role is going to be this season. And what I kind of, based my article around when I was doing his player preview for Inside the Hall was the idea that it's not even necessarily dependent on Doron how much he plays this year. It's dependent on guys like Joey Brunk, Grace Thompson, and Trace Jackson Davis. Because as a senior, you know what you're going to get from Doron Davis. You know what his skill set is. You know what his deficiencies are. Not a ton is going to change beyond him just being healthy and being able to stay on the court and stay out of foul trouble. And that is just going to have to kind of mesh with how quickly can Trace Jackson Davis learn the offense, how much of a deer in the headlights look is he going to have as a freshman in Big Ten games? How well will Joey Brunk assimilate into the team? Because in many ways, Joey Brunk and Doron Davis are similar players, albeit Doron Davis has, an exquisite ability to pass the ball out of the post and really from anywhere around the court that Joey maybe doesn't have. Does Grace Thompson show, any ability to kind of bang and crash for rebounds and just use his body to box out people the same way that Doron does? Maybe he's added some muscle, maybe he's added some technique, but if not, then that's still a skill set advantage that Doron has. So it's kind of at this weird point in Doron Davis's Indiana career when he is on You know how much better Indiana plays when he plays, but at the same time, is Indiana able to afford him on the court when you have such talent that also exists around him at the 4 and 5 spots?
Andy, do you think Doron's better coming off the bench this year, or would he be better in a starting role? And what do you think he's going to be able to do over the 30 games this season?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I find most interesting, where you kind of you look at the stats from the scrimmage, and again, you don't know what to take from. Is he trying to ease Doron along? But if you figure, and rightfully so in my mind, you wouldn't see a scenario where Brunk and Davis are playing together on the floor at the same time. And if you assume that one of those guys is going to be on the court through the duration of the game, which again, maybe that part doesn't end up being true, but you're capped at 40 minutes a game to split between Brunk and Doron. And so I think it'll be interesting to see whether that becomes kind of an even split, which I think is, I guess it's best or worst case, depending upon who you're thinking about. If they split those 20 and 20, then that's one thing. But do some of those minutes, does it start to be, is Brunk playing 24 versus 16 for Doron? I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing at this point, because we haven't seen enough from what Joey Brunk looks like, that the current incarnation of Joey Brunk looks like. But I think those are the things that are really interesting in terms of whether Doron would embrace that kind of role. I think if he can be effective in those short spurts, I think there were times even over the course of his career where he may not have played a lot of minutes, but when he was on the court, they really fed him, and it made a concerted effort to get the ball into him. So I think you can be successful as a team with a guy doing that you really force feed inside when he's in. He is a good post scorer. I think Jared has talked a lot about some of the synergy numbers about that. And the reality of the situation, and this is really true for both guys that are in that center conversation, is, defensively, it's going to come down to how well they can be able to move on the perimeter and in ball screens. And I think that's not been a strength for really either one of them to this point in their respective careers, albeit with Brunk at Butler. So whether that 40 minutes become, is a full 40 minutes between the two of them, or it gets less, I think is going to say a lot about their defense. And then you just got to figure out how the minutes get divvied out from there. I guess based on, if you want to read a ton into the scrimmage, you'd say Brunk is the starter, and Doron's going to come off the bench and be an effective guy in that role. But I think it's probably too early to say that for certain yet, at least based on, what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and in the scrimmage too, I think Indiana played it really close to the vest with limiting his minutes and the guards being held out, and even Trace Jackson Davis getting 17, 18 minutes. I think all of those guys are important, and while you want to get them some experience playing against other people, it is just a scrimmage. Cam, we have a question from Cam. We're not sure if it's from you or not. Wanted to set this up, but it goes right along with what Andy was talking about, the 15, 20 minutes. And Cam asked his expectations for Doron is, what are your expectations to embrace the role 15 to 20 minutes as a backup big? And I'm going to add something to that for you. Do you think he's better in short spurts where he could go full out and then come back instead of extended minutes of time? So is Doron going to embrace that role if he only gets about 14 to 20 minutes? And how do you chop that up best for him if you were the coach?
Well, yeah, I guess kind of on the topic of Joey Brunk and Doron Davis bringing a similar skill set type thing to Indiana, you also maybe kind of think both of them are very veteran type players, and they bring the same kind of intangibles as well. Gritty, hard nosed, not afraid to both yell at teammates, but also getting in the face of opponents and standing up for guys like that. So to that effect, I think Doron would embrace a role off the bench, and personally, I do think he's better in that maybe you go 3 or 4 minute short burst span with Doron, you sub him out for maybe a 5 or 6 longer period of time with Brunk or whoever else he's sharing time with down low, just because I think over the course of the season as well, that's going to help the wear and tear on his body as well. I mean, you have enough of a proven course of action with Doron to maybe not call him fragile per se, because that's a bit of a loaded term, but he's a guy who I think it's fair to say is injury prone, and it wouldn't take too much to maybe re-aggravate something like an Achilles, or if he gets some bumps and bruises around the knee or ankle like he did last season, to where you don't want him being ineffective and being shut down or playing so few minutes, like you mentioned, in such a critical span of the season and the slog that is January, February, March in the Big Ten. So, bringing him in 4-minute, maybe a couple minute spurts, 3 or 4 minutes at times during a game probably works a lot better for him from a physical standpoint, also just from an Indiana standpoint, because then when he's just coming in off the bench in short spurts, it becomes easier to force feed him, maybe take advantage of an opposing team's second unit. And just from like a schematic coaching standpoint, if you have to prepare for Doron Davis to enter the game at any 2 to 3 minute burst, that's going to be something that's occupying a ton of time in the film room and a ton of time in practices before you lead up to play Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me that you got, we'll use the 16-minute thing, because I think people throwing out 15 to 20. Let's even just use 16. If you got 4 really good 4-minute spurts out of Doron, where you got the best of him that you've seen over the course of time, while also saving the wear and tear on him to be able to have him for a longer period of the season, like I think most people would take that. In an ideal world, you take the version of him that we've seen against Duke and in some of those other games, you say, man, it'd be great if this guy could play 25 minutes a game. I just don't know that he can at this point. And Cam, to your point, I think, while it's been different things over the course of his career, I do think there's enough of a track record to have concern and say, look, I'm not sure this is the guy that can give me 25 minutes a night, but if I could get 16, 18 really good minutes out of him, that's a really solid contribution. And then you just kind of fill in other stuff around that.
Lee asked about that question. Is Doron fragile this year? Is he going to be solid and healthy? And I think that's a huge question because of the track record. And some of those injuries are hard to overcome. But I do agree with what you guys are saying, that short burst. And that's why I think he'll be better off the bench to match up with the backup or some backups and bring some offensive ability and defensive ability to the second unit. And so we'll see what the rotation is. We hope that he's healthy, because a healthy Doron Davis helps this team, regardless of the number of minutes. Andy, what does Doron offensively bring to this Indiana basketball program?
Well, I think for a team that has at least stated a desire to really, play from the inside out, he's a guy who, as Cam mentioned, is a good passer, has got a solid set of post moves, and is somebody who can really be a focal point and make defenses react. And I think that's ultimately what you're trying to find with this team, whether that's schematically or some other way. Who do you have that actually, has some kind of pull on a defense? And, last year, that guy was Juwan and Romeo and things like that. And so everybody's trying to figure out, certainly where scoring comes from, but there's also just a component of like, who has the, gravitational pull on the defense to really understand what's happening. And if Doron's playing well and IU's doing a good job of getting him the ball in positions where he can be dangerous, the other team has to react and has to do something. That puts you in rotation. That opens up a lot of things for other players. So I think that's really where he becomes a focal point. Defensively is going to be the challenge, and always has been. But I also, you look at it of last year, I don't know that he fell into this as much as Juwan, but there were times that guys were just out there trying not to commit fouls because you turn and you look, and there clearly wasn't anybody that the coaching staff felt comfortable putting in the game other than them. Because if Doron wasn't out there at the 5, it was Juwan. And it wasn't because there weren't other guys with size on the roster, but actions say a lot, and there weren't many times that the coach turned down the bench and put somebody other than Juwan in at that spot. I don't believe that's the case this year, whether that be Joey Brunk for sure. Race Thompson can fill some of those minutes, even though he's a bit undersized in that scenario. Trace could slide over there. You definitely get the impression that there's more other guys that they trust, which doesn't mean Doron should go out and, foul at an incredibly high rate either. But I do think there's a little bit of a cushion there where you can say, hey, look, if you get a couple fouls, that's not the end of the world for the way that this team is constructed. So I think that's a positive. But really, if they can get, if teams are going to, single cover him in the post, I think he's going to find ways to score more often than not. And if they aren't, he's a guy that I feel like you can trust to find other guys who can hopefully knock down open shots in a way that we didn't see a whole lot of last year.
Yeah, I think he brings a lot to Indiana offensively. Defensively, if he can sit in the post and guard, I think and block shots and rebound, that's his strength. I do think the weakness of Doron is when he gets out on the floor guarding screen and roll action. He's not the quickest defender out there, and that's when he gets some fouls, hipping the guard coming off the ball screen. But Cam, coming to you, if we're back on this show, the three of us in March, and Indiana's won 20 games and they're being considered for the tournament, what's his stat line? What's his average in those 16 minutes or so? And that would mean Indiana's doing well and he's really providing. Or I guess what's his ceiling?
Right, yeah. If you look at, kind of maybe the best of Doron Davis, what you saw from him when he started all 15 games, before that torn Achilles hit, he was putting up 10 points, 4.3 rebounds, and shooting 61.5% from the floor. And if you're gonna, let's go with the theory that what we think is gonna be served best for Doron, where he's got these 4-minute periods in the game, where he's going about 16 minutes, providing energy and some size and some force off the bench. I think if you get somewhere around 10 points from him and maybe 3 or 4 rebounds, and especially toward the end of those final 14 games from last season, he was pretty consistently getting 3 rebounds a game when he was in that role. I think you call that a success. I mean, this is going to be an Indiana team who's going to use, maybe more of a platoon scoring approach, assuming Devontae is not, going 50 points and Grand Theft Auto shooter mode every night. You got to think that Doron can get at least somewhere around 8 to 10 points, but I think the rebounding is going to be crucial too. He can't come in and be completely ineffective from a rebounding standpoint. He's got to get 3 or 4 boards during those periods where he's going kind of, a bull in a china shop as fast as possible down there. And that's the whole point too, is you want him to be able to get at least that stat line, because you're prioritizing rest and giving him those chances to, okay, you're going against the other team's second unit, you have to go in and make an impact. And, to the point of him playing with Indiana's second unit, it's perhaps better that he's going to get that chance because he can work in tandem with some of the younger guys and provide some more of that floor security as an experienced player as well.
Yeah, and I think you're almost going to look at that 5 spot between Brunk and Thompson and whoever plays that 5 spot as one player. And if you can get 12 to 14 points and, 7-8 rebounds combined, playing their best, maybe even better than that, I think that's going to be good. But we all hope that Doron is healthy and can have a great senior year and contribute to a NCAA tournament berth. I think he's a big part of Indiana's program, and we'll start seeing that shortly as the scrimmage against Gannon comes up next week, and then the regular season in about 10 or 11 days. So coming up on our third segment, we'll answer your questions, including one about season won and lost projects, maybe if we get to that, and another one about we're just going to ask some questions because we changed it up in the pregame discussion from what Jared had. But stick with us here on the Assembly Call. (40-22). So we got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
I didn't change that after we decided what questions. So there's slip up number 1.
That's all right.
That's all right.
No one noticed.
He's getting his Halloween costume ready, so.
That's fine.
All right. What time do I have to be out of here?
It's
49-24.
Is it 50 or we got 52 minutes?
He said here, time to start. 49-24 leaves 36 seconds for the outro.
Huh.
So we got about 9 minutes.
Okay.
And
I don't. Maybe it used to be 52 minutes. I always get confused.
So I will try to do this, Cameron. If you're in the middle of talking and hear this,
that's it. We're done. No more questions.
It's a hard cutoff.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of rude. I don't mean to be rude. You're doing a great job.
It's not you. It's Ryan. So
it's
don't worry.
Ryan. That's correct.
And he does mean to be rude. So
yes.
that definitely is.
I'll channel all my anger toward him then. Understood.
Everyone does. I mean,
that's how you do it. And then we get people saying that we're not nice enough to him. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I think Doron will be good if he gets 16 to 20 minutes and they can just spot him. I'm not sure he's a starter and getting major minutes. He might start, but major minutes.
Yeah, I think you just hear too many good things about what they think about Brunk, and maybe they end up splitting the minutes 20 and 20, but I agree with what you said, Coach. I think if you combine their production and gets you somewhere in the 13, 14, 15-point range and 8-ish rebounds, then I think you'd feel pretty good about getting that from a center position.
What do you guys think about, I'm very high on Joey Brunk. I like what I'm hearing. Rabjohn stopped by the tailgate and said he's really leading practices hard and demanding people, do things right. And I think that's a big plus for Indiana if he is doing those things. But why does he leave Butler? And what did Butler not see in him that shouldn't give us pause? Anyone have any thought about that? Because we're all excited. It's a new guy. He wants to play at Indiana, but there was a reason maybe that he struggled, and I know that.
He was a Holtman recruit, though, wasn't he?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I would assume it's a little bit. I would assume that is a factor in it. I don't know that would be the only factor, but I don't know. And I don't, he didn't seem like any of the stuff that I read wasn't necessarily a guy who IU went after real hard to begin with. So maybe just saw a potential opening to go someplace that he may have wanted to go all along with the coach that maybe aligned a little bit better with him. I don't know, but he certainly seems, even the way they've talked about him, is that almost seems like not a different player, but kind of feels like maybe he just needed a little bit of a change of scenery from the role he was in at Butler. And
yeah. That's what they're saying in the chat mob is coaching situation. I think he's got to make sure he guards and rebounds. I think that's the physical knock that I heard. But you know what? As a coach, you like players that take care of the locker room and take care of pre-practice, and you like toughness, and you will find minutes, and those minutes will be productive even if you have some deficiencies in your physical play. A lot of times we just look at, can you do this, can you do that, but that hustle, that fight, that leadership piece can be all the difference in a couple of wins.
I guess the other thing too is that he's got 2 years of eligibility left too, so he's a bit more of a longer term play than bringing in a guy like Fitzner was last year, or any kind of 1 year rental that the grad transfer market usually is too. So this is a guy that while he's splitting time with Doron this year, or however that situation shakes out, you got him for another year too. So he's you got next season taken care of as well in theory.
Yeah, and people told me that he wanted to come to IU, but that the previous administration wasn't all that interested in him. And he was runner-up to Mr. Basketball, I believe, when he came out. So maybe that, again, that's, he didn't like where he was at Butler and the role he was going to have, and had a chance to come play for the school he wanted to play for. And it sure seems like it, because everything I've heard has just been fantastic.
Yeah, that's something to be said for a guy being someplace that he really, really wants to be. And I think that's one of the, things we keep talking about with anybody that Archie's really brought in lately, whether that be recruits or, transfer like him, is just somebody who really, values being there and, seems to really want to play for IU. So that's good with me.
Shout out to, some of the media guys who stopped by and share some insight on the way to the football game. We're starting to call our tailgate media row, because a lot of the guys stop by and try to get them to grab a burger or something on the way in. But
you're trading bratwurst for information. Good for you.
Right.
What can you do?
Yeah, it's nice. The whole IU media group is to me, likes to share some information. Really appreciates everyone's work, and I know the people that come, our listeners that come and can talk some hoops and some football. That's been key. But yeah, that last home game, Rabbi was really just all over about how Brunk is really leading in a positive way, and was good to hear. All right, let's knock this thing out. Let's go with the – let's see. You don't want to go season predictions or the Mike Davis one, right?
Well, I mean, I think the Davis one I think the Davis one doesn't necessarily require having had to listen to that, so I think that's okay. I definitely have not done enough to give any kind of like win-loss prediction for sure.
Okay.
So I would feel more prepared to answer Ken's question than the one about the win-loss record. So I'll put it that way.
So
I also don't know. There seems to be one that got started here, but I don't know what just somebody's name is. So I'm gonna take that out.
Which one's that?
I just took it out. It just had somebody's name that I assume was going to be followed by a question, but turned out just to be someone's name. So
I do like the one about Cam. Cam put in another great question.
Yeah.
Do you have any pregame rituals? We got to
still,
have him
yeah.
back on the show.
Yeah, Cam's
That might be a non-basketball one. That wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, that'd be fine to fit in if we need time or something toward the end.
And there's one about depth. Do you like that one, or
I thought that one was interesting.
Okay, let's start with that one.
Because I think in some ways, well, I'll just kind of say what I was going to say for it. But I think it's an interesting question given fewer actual scholarship players. But I think the answer might be different.
Okay, so here's the order. We're going to go with being down 2 scholarships. How do you feel about this? And then I'll go into the one right above it that says, do you think Archie didn't play Devontae and Rob for strategy or for health reasons? I think that's pretty quick answer there. And then we'll go down to, do any of us, what do we do pregame before a game, whether we're working it or just watching a game as an IU fan, and be ready to be cut off at some point there, be real quick there as we got 9 minutes.
Yep, I think that's fine. And then if we have time, that one that Chris sent about the Michigan-Tennessee football thing, I think might be kind of interesting.
All right, we'll throw that one in last.
You got it. You're in charge.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to have a cold beer as soon as this is over. My Wi-Fi upload speed is horrible. So I drive into school, which is like 44 seconds. I got to go to school to upload tonight. So I got to wait till I get home to have a –
I need to find a second place to do that because I know when I've had to do it, I've texted Jared. I was like, well, it's starting. And then he's like, oh, how long does it say it's going to be? And then I tell him, and he seems disgusted by how slow the upload speed is.
2 hours or something the one time I tried it, and then I just
wow.
I think mine was about that makes me feel better. Mine was like 45 minutes, so I feel
mine was
better
hours.
Jeez.
So all right, here we go.
Only the best for us.
Yeah. Why does he ask us to do this stuff? All right, here we go. Better hit record.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms and Cam Drummond. Remember, you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup, even during the off season, and after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. It's now time for our mailbag. All questions were submitted via Twitter and our private IU basketball discussion community, assemblycall.com/community. So fellas, we're going to start out with this from the outsider off of Twitter. With being down 2 scholarships, how do you feel about this year's depth in comparison to last year? For context, Fitz, Jake, Clifton, and McBob were present but underperformed. There seems to be more ability per player this year, but avoiding injuries will be key. Cam, we'll start with you. The depth for this year.
Yeah, I think that kind of, hints at a very interesting concept because, for all the good that they brought to the program, I'm sure, kind of behind closed doors and in isolated moments last season, Jake Forrester and Clifton Moore really didn't factor much into last year's team, and they probably weren't going to be integral parts even if you drop them on this year's roster too. I mean, I don't think you'll find too many people to be clamoring for Jake Forrester or Clifton Moore to be starting over Joey Brunk, Doron Davis, Race Thompson, that kind of thing. So I hadn't really thought about that before, but the idea of there does seem to be more ability per player this season and, less players on scholarship, yes, but you're going to get more out of those players at the same time.
Andy?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I hadn't really thought of it that way either. When you look at just raw number wise, I mean, I think everybody really viewed McRoberts essentially as a scholarship player. So you kind of go from 14 essentially to 11. But I think some of the things we brought up from the scrimmage, bear this out a little bit of, you really had everybody make some kind of positive contribution along the way, and so if you think about it like that, I think it's a good thing, and I think there are more guys probably on this year's team that Archie feels comfortable playing maybe than last year. So if that's the sign of depth, then I think it is a deeper team, even though in some ways it's it lacks experience. But I do think. I think he's comfortable with more guys. The injury part that was listed at the end of that question, I think is underscored pretty well by the scrimmage too, because you run out of guards real fast when dependent upon what's going on. So I think that part is that part is concerning, because even though you might have more confidence in a smaller number of guys, at some point, if you got guys sitting out, it's a numbers game that you really can't come back from. As you look at it that way, they've done a nice job of adding some walk-ons from a practice perspective that will help out for sure. But if you look at guys you're going to put in games, if this team has any near the level of injuries that they had a year ago, things get rough pretty quick.
This question's from RC, the MC, talking about the scrimmage. Do you think Archie didn't play Devontae and Rob in the market scrimmage simply not to show his full hand yet? And I think we all agree that it might have been injuries. But I'll add to RC, the MC's question. Andy, do you think we'll see the full squad in the Gannon scrimmage, or do you think you'll see some players sit out or limited minutes?
I think you may still see some guys limited. Certainly limited minutes, I would say. If you're not that far removed from the scrimmage, if there's still concern, that's not really the scenario to me that you want to go, full bore and play guys, maybe more than you're comfortable. I would like to think that they probably still get at least a little bit of action, but I would guess those minutes will be at the very least scaled back, and hopefully we at least see a full complement of players next Tuesday.
Cam, what do you think the rotation might look like given what we saw in the scrimmage for the Gannon exhibition?
Yeah, kind of along those same lines. I think we're going to continue to see a heavy dose of Armar and Franklin in there. And I guess for me, that kind of was an interesting parallel to last season, too, when you saw Devontae Green be held out a bit at the start of the season with that thigh injury he had. And that's when Rob Finney came in, made his mark, and, eventually was able to kind of wrangle away that starting job, which everyone kind of maybe penciled Devontae in for last year and made it his own. So probably a lot more of Armar and Franklin. Maybe you'll see, I guess, Al Durham was the only guard in that scrimmage starting lineup. You'll see Al Durham shift over to the 2, maybe get Armand some primary ball handling responsibilities. And also Archie's mentioned this year that Al's taken over a bit more of the primary ball handling responsibilities. So maybe get him more work and some more live game settings with that as well.
Yeah, I think you'll still see some interesting rotations, if not some players held out of the Gannon exhibition. And it's a reminder to everyone, too, is that is an exhibition, and coaches are trying different rotations, different things to get on film. Take a look at the stats, look at the box score, take a deep breath, and then when the games start for real on November 5th, when we really want to get into a little bit of the deeper analysis. So we got about 3.5 minutes left. Cam also wrote this question. We still think it's our guest host here. Do you have any pregame rituals? So I think that question might be geared as fans. Cam, do you have any pregame rituals when you're just watching a game and or when you're working a game?
Yes. So anytime, me and my roommate, Dylan Wallace, who's also working with Assembly Hall and Inside the Hall this year, we live just a stone's throw from both Memorial Stadium and Assembly Hall. And I got the room upstairs this year that has a door to a patio area next to it to have people over or whatever. So the first thing I do is I spring out of bed the morning of a game, be it football or basketball, and I just go straight outside to feel what the weather's like. I don't check an app. I don't rely on the forecast. I just go outside and see if it's cold or not and base my decision on whether to wear a sweater or a tie or an overcoat or something like that. And then usually I just don't eat breakfast because I get up too late for the game. So I guess that's a ritual or something.
Andy?
I probably used to be a lot more superstitious about different things years ago. Now I find that I'm usually getting home from something else, scrambling to try to find what channel the game's on and stuff like that. So I have a little bit less time to be superstitious, which is probably saving me some time that is not necessarily wasted. But no, I'm with the show, I think it's changed a lot about how I watch, where I'm trying to take some notes during things and pay a little bit closer attention so that I can remember or single out specific moments. I think Jared has said the same thing over the course of time, that it kind of changes a little bit of how you watch the game. So there's a little bit more preparation in that regard than there probably used to be.
Yeah, that's true. When you're going to be on the show immediately afterwards, you have to have notes and you write down when plays time. So I'm getting all that ready. But usually for me, it's getting a nice beverage of choice ready for the games that I'm not on the show. Maybe occasionally getting out the candy striped pants to wear on the big games. Usually I will have an IU attire on, and then just sitting down and getting ready to watch the games. But no food or anything. When I was a coach, and when I do coach during the season, I do have some things that I do to make sure we are ready for the game, and I do those on a regular basis, but I'll keep those secrets. So
yeah, if you let those out, they're not going to work anymore, so you can't.
Yeah, exactly. So real quick, we got about a minute. Jeff asked, even though it's an exhibition against Gannon, what will the starting lineup be? Quickly, we'll start with Cam and then go to Andy.
I'll go Armand Franklin, Al Durham, Justin Smith, Demezy Anderson, and Joey Brunk.
And Andy?
I'll say Brunk, Justin Smith. I'll say Trace and or no, I won't actually. I'll say Rob, Al, and Devontae. I'll take the positive side of they're all going to be healthy enough and everybody's going to be out there ready to play.
Well, I do think that if they can play, they will be in. I think it's vital to get them some time and get them on film before the season starts, but I will always err on caution as last year's injuries just cannot happen again this year. So Coach will be in attendance. Richie in the chat mob is going to be with me, so if you're in Assembly Hall, check us out, try to find us, and say hello.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
Well, that'll do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing most of the music you hear on the show, and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next Thursday night. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank everybody for coming out.
And that'll do it.
There you go.
All right. Nice work.
Hey, thank you.
Nice work.
Cam, enjoyed you on the show. I enjoy your work, your written work, and glad you're joining.
Thanks for submitting those questions for yourself. I mean, really,
no kidding,
bang up job all around. So
went off perfectly. Yeah, I don't
yeah.
think
Used a burner account that had like somebody else's last name on it. So that was good. Well done.
Pete Politico or whatever Romney used was sending those in. On the team's name.
Yeah, one of my many burner accounts actually paid off this time instead of just being used to like stalk people online. Yeah. So that was good.
Didn't know Mitt Romney listened to the show.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. So you're going down for the game, Coach?
Yeah.
That's it's Tuesday, right? I said that out loud on the show, and then I was like, "Oh crap, is that really right?"
Yeah, it's Tuesday.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's Tuesday night. A friend of mine has season tickets, and they couldn't use them, so I got them for a pretty good bargain.
Nice.
So
very good. Yeah, I think we're going to try to go to the Arkansas game while everybody's off on break and the holidays. The kids haven't actually been to a game there, so I was like, that'd be a good chance as any to make it work.
Jay, a couple good comments here, and thanks to everyone saying congratulations and everything. I appreciate it. It is a little nerve-wracking. It's a lot better to be on those guys' side than the production side. The tailgate is going to be an all-day tailgate, Jay. I think if the lots open up at 7 or 8, Coach will be there at 7 or 8. We're going to have a fire pit, and we're going to have several rounds of food probably. I'm thinking about gumbo and rice and some burgers, and so a 12-hour tailgate might be happening. So if you can wander over from your spot. Hey, we didn't get a question from the great questioner. What's going on?
Yeah, Jay, and then he gave me a hard time because I didn't. I said the same lineup that he apparently had mentioned earlier in the chat, and so he asked me to credit his source, but him as the source. I was ready to list 6 guys, which I thought would have been probably not a great move, but you know.
Jay needs to call into the hotline and leave a message so we can play his voice.
I think he did that did he do that on the Crimson Cast one where they were? I feel like he did. I'm almost sure of it. The one that Galen and Chris did. I think he did call into that.
I mean, I'll tell you what. This might be a banner moment for the Assembly Call tailgate, but Joel Wonder comes to the tailgate and brings bourbon, and all I do is keep filling his glass full of ice, and he just keeps pouring bourbon the whole pregame, and that dang thing's gone by the time it's kickoff. That guy's an MVP, man. I couldn't do that. I have a hard enough time just with the regular beer, let alone that hard stuff. And Chad also said, Cam, you need IU stuff next time you're on the show, or at least some red.
Yeah.
That's the criticism coming.
Yeah, you were criticized for being overdressed.
Yeah, I'm sure I
not
was.
And
yeah.
not wearing IU stuff. So that's okay.
I don't like his hair, but I don't know why that.
Oh, that's what we're coming at me for?
I mean,
okay, cool. All right, good. Good to know. I'll make note of that. Yeah.
I'm glad I wasn't on the show with you and Jared both. That really stuck out.
Yeah. I'll go. Yeah.
This is the AC After Dark. You can just cut it loose.
That's too fun. Nice.
I'm just being trained to be Jared's clone in every way, from this to doing the banner mornings every other week. So I guess that mission's going pretty well so far.
Yep, you're doing good. You just gotta
you're doing a great job.
Yeah, you just gotta switch over when you wear something else. You gotta wear a flesh colored shirt like you did the one time, and then the transformation will be nearly complete.
No kidding. That was bad.
Perfect. I'll get that in my wardrobe right now.
Yeah, definitely knock that out.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. All right, well done, Coach.
Okay.
Thanks
everyone,
everybody
thanks,
for.
Bob. Thanks, Cam. Good to see you and talk to you.
Thank you guys.
This is the last show without last show without actual game action to talk about for quite a while.
So
hey,
good thing.
any Bloomington people, Coach and Mrs. Coach will be in Bloomington for the volleyball game tomorrow night. And Buffalo's around 5:00. So if you're missing this cute-haired dude from the tailgate, Joel or Richie, try to hit me up. Or if you're at the volleyball game, let me know.
Cool. All right.
All righty, man.
Sounds good. Everybody have a good weekend. Hopefully IU gets to win at Nebraska. Any thoughts on that, Coach? Cam, anybody?
I'm driving with some people tomorrow to Nebraska. We're going 10.5 hours each way to go cover it for various student media outlets. So we're making some pit stops in Missouri, around Kansas City, at some selected barbecue joints on each side of the trip. So we're making this worthwhile.
That's a good plan.
I tell you what, I've been very wait and see, and I'll believe it when they get there. And I really wasn't happy with last week's performance, even though a win, but I think it freed up the team. Things didn't go super well, injuries and third down conversions and all that stuff, but they won. And that might be enough just to turn this team loose. I think they might win and a Saturday. I really do. And
Nebraska's quarterback playing, or is he still out?
I don't
Martinez?
know. I think he might
he's
be
a game
out.
time decision.
Oh, everybody has a game time decision for that one.
Yeah, honestly, I was on a Nebraska radio show earlier today doing some predictions. I actually predicted 1917 Indiana for some foolish reason because I haven't learned my lesson with IU football yet. But ton of injuries for everyone.
Just not beaten down enough. You'll get there.
Yeah, only 3 years so far. I need to get to like the 5-10 year threshold is when
you're not even close to being numb to it yet, so you're okay.
Yeah.
So I'll believe it when they get 6th, and that's what I've said. I need to see something, and that the narrative's still there. I thought for sure that Maryland was going to score at the end.
Yeah.
And I hate being pessimistic about Indiana sports, but it's just been a long time that they haven't finished.
Yeah, it's hard not to be. So yeah, I don't know. I'm decent feeling. I mean, I think if Penix plays, I'd give him a good shot. If he doesn't, I
agree.
It's maybe 40-60 instead of 60-40.
Was it a concussion, or was it something with his arm, or what was the problem with Penix?
I mean, I would specify there. I mean, as usual, keeping it pretty close to the chest. I mean, Eastern Illinois, they never said, but like that looked like it was his shoulder that was bothering him. But honestly, no one knows. I think it might be concussion though. That's like what I've seen rumors of, at least. Yeah,
they said I was listening to the game last week. We were coming back from. I think it was a soccer game. Well, that's a fairly safe bet for me at this point. That I was probably, if I was in the car, I was probably coming back from one. And yeah, there were a couple times that like Fish was even saying on the radio that he was kind of like looked shaken up and got up slow and different things like that. So that led me to believe that, but I didn't really see. I never went back and kind of watched the play that it was. So I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm sure plenty of no shortage of gamesmanship on the part of both coaches trying to keep everybody in the dark about who's actually going to be under center. So
well, I heard Nebraska's backup is even out. So it's either Martinez
or the third string guy. I think I heard that as well. But I thought they said Martinez might be close to coming back. So
he seems closer than Penix, but we're all just going to be sitting up there in Memorial Stadium in Lincoln trying to get binoculars on whoever's warming up. So more of the same.
Yeah, we shall see. So, all right. Well,
all right, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks, Cam, again for coming on. Thanks, Andy.
Yep, no problem. Anytime.
Hey, if you're going to be in town for that Arkansas game, I may try to weasel my way down there. I think that's a Sunday, right?
It is a Sunday. Yeah, I think we might try to go and stay. So, yeah, I got to figure out tickets and all that, but I think they'll be relatively easy to come by at that point. So,
all right.
That is our plan at this point because we'll have all of our family Christmas stuff done at that point. So, I think our plan is to do it. Just a matter of getting a room and getting some tickets.
All right. I may see you then.
All right.
All right,
Sounds
everybody.
Good, all right.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Cam. Thanks, Coach.
See you guys.